Yeah, and we understand that we have Nigerians watching everywhere in the world, in the United States, in Africa, in Canada, Australia, and other parts of Asia. Would like you to join the conversation. Use the hashtag 2019 elections. You can also use the hashtag the verdict, or send us emails. The verdict at channelstv.com.
Don't forget, we also have our Twitter handle there at Channels TV. You can also do that on Instagram at Channels Television. So get your thoughts and your observations and what have you, so that we'll continue to keep our conversation going right here as far as the 2019 general elections are concerned.
And if you do have questions or perspectives to these issues that we're discussing, we welcome that, and we can ask the panel here to provide some thought on whatever issues that you sent to us. Ayo, I understand that we have a report from one of our correspondents.
We have one of our correspondents that's in Bayelsa State, Dobra Timmy Woods, who's standing by to give us an update, to tell us what actually went down as far as the elections held yesterday are concerned. Dobra, over to you.
Hello, today. Election in Bayelsa State today was relatively peaceful, but very hectic. For us, coverage started at Otweke. Otweke is the home state of former President Goodluck Jonathan. Now, voting started by past 9 a.m. because the electoral officers and the electoral materials got there by that time. The former president came to vote in company of his wife and his mother. At the end of the voting exercise, he commended the INEC for the process, but believed that the process can be much better. We then proceeded to Imbiama. Imbiama is in Rivers State. At Imbiama, we experienced some level of violence as some alleged hoodlums were moving from polling units to disrupt the process. Now, I'd like to inform you that for today's coverage, I covered Bayelsa State, Rivers State, and some parts of Delta State. From Imbiama, we then proceeded to Patani in Delta State. At Delta State, we experienced a very peaceful electoral process as people of Patani sat down, came out in their numbers, sat down, got accredited, voted, and waited for the electoral materials to be sorted out and the collation of the results. It was very peaceful. Then we started the journey back to Bayelsa. On our way back to Bayelsa, we noticed that the road was very free. There were no movement as security operatives ensured that anybody without a due accreditation was not allowed to move. Back in Bayelsa, we visited Odi community. At Odi community, we discovered that lots of people, young, old, and everybody in between, came out to cast their vote. They didn't just vote and go back home. They voted and they were there watching the process. Now at Odi, we discovered that by 2 p.m., which is the time allotted by INEC for voting to stop, there were lots of people on the queue who were yet to vote. Now the presiding officer had to allow them vote, as it wasn't their fault. There was this back and forth between them and the presiding officer of the ad hoc staff being slow. That's the result why they didn't meet the 2 p.m. mark. So they now agreed that everybody on the queue would vote. We then moved over to Agbere community. Agbere community in Sagbama local government area of Bayelsa State. That is when we didn't experience the peace we've been experiencing so far. At Agbere community, now there was an experience of ballot box snatching as some hoodlums invaded the polling unit and snatched some ballot box, and that discouraged voters a lot as everybody left the area and went back home. Back in Yenegua, we noticed a very peaceful experience as voting and accreditation was going on simultaneously, and security operatives were everywhere ensuring that the process was violence-free. Bayelsa election 2019 would have been violence-free and just described as a peaceful experience, but for reports reaching us that the photographer to Governor Seriaki Dixon was caught in the electoral violence. Right now, Mr. Reginald Day, photographer to Governor Dixon, is dead. Him alongside one other at Owerikara community in Southern Niger local government area of Bayelsa State. In Nembe local government area of Bayelsa State, Basambri community to be precise, they also experienced some level of violence, and there are still unconfirmed reports reports of the number of people that died and got injured due to the experience of violence at that area. Other than that, there have been unconfirmed reports of violence and ballot box snatching in some areas of Bayelsa State, but that's unconfirmed because it's only coming from the social media. Security operatives at that areas have said they cannot confirm any violence in such areas. So for now, the only places in Bayelsa State that we can confirm that there was violence that led to that is at Owekera community in Southern Niger local government and Basambri community in Nembe. For now, most voters are back home. The electoral process in most local government area was peaceful. Sorting of electoral materials were done, collation was done peacefully, and people are waiting for the compilation of the results. From Bayelsa, Deborah Timiwood, Channels Television News.
All right, thank you so much, Deborah Timiwood, for that situation report there from her observations as far as the presidential and National Assembly elections are concerned. She did talk about moving around Bayelsa, parts of Delta and Rivers, and largely peaceful. Of course, we had skirmishes in some areas, and one key thing she talked about was a photographer to Governor of Bayelsa State, Seriki Dixon, who was caught up in one of the shootouts and is now sadly no more. He's dead, and it just brings to mind, I mean, it tells you that
it's so sad and unfortunate.
Very sad one.
And that at every turn we get to election, you know, we'll have to expect that some persons would die, and you know, and then tomorrow life just continues as if nothing had happened. You know, so recently, you remember when the president's statement of ballot box snatchers that the army was going to, that might probably be the last, you know, offense they will commit, and there's so much controversy generated. And I began to ask myself, these are not, like we have said, these are not new to us. In 2014, 2015, if you remember, also, at that point also, when the former commissioner of Rivers State, same Rivers State, made this same statement, calling out his men who are to monitor election duties, that instructing them that the event that they are shot at by any thugs, that they also should fire back. It generated so much noise. Then the ruling party today that were in opposition then, you know, vociferously called for the resignation of Tiamumbu, you know, called him names and they condemned such statements. The PDP, who were in government then, endorsed the statement, supported him, citing the same section 33, subsection 2, paragraph B. And but today the roles are reversed. You find out that the president making the same statement that Tumbu had made, and then those that condemned Dubu then. But today we're supporting the president. And those that supported Umbu then, today, are condemning the president over the same statement. Hypocrisy of leadership. And then you ask yourself, you know, how can we get it right? Until we get our electoral processes right, until we look at some of these leaders, some of these, you know, for lack of a better name, let me just call them rulers, who are masquerading as leaders, until we look them in the eye and say, look, we need to speak with one voice and not allow ourselves, you know, to be so divided. Initially, you know, that we're so divided in 2015 election that a lot of people thought that Nigeria was going to disintegrate. One would have expected that after the 2015 election that we find, you know, those opportunities to build bridges. But no, it further divided us. We had the wailers, we had the hailers, we had the people who gave 97% and those who gave 5%. And then if you condemn some of those things that we conveniently accepted before, in pre-2015, we started condemning. And those we condemned before, we started accepting. And when you have people who are supposed to be the one to build, you know, trust in a system, who are supposed to look at, you know, political leadership critically and begin to raise issues and ask questions vis-a-vis the promises that were made to them, irrespective of who is involved. and then you hear these same people making excuses for leadership, then you know that we will never, get it wrong. And then the moment the INEC postponed the election, the first question some people started asking, they wanted to find out, if the ruling party or the opposition party, depending on whose side it favors most. And that's where you now begin to hear people aligning and supporting without actually asking. Like the general has said, logistic is vague. It's ambiguous, it's big. Anybody can hide under logistic. What are the specific logistic problems? So that we begin to identify them. Look at, I'm just trying to run down through all of the problems. Look at the distribution of ballot materials also today. These are logistic problems. In the first segment, I talked about, creation of rack centers to ease flow of materials. Well, those rack centers are still there. And when we listen to INEC, the chairman's briefing, on Monday and Wednesday, the first one on Monday, he did say that, giving a rundown of how they are going to move materials, that by Friday, that materials would be at the rack center. And that one would have expected that all of those materials at the rack centers would have been sorted out, and that by Friday, Saturday morning, all the polling officers will just come, sign for their materials and go. But on Friday morning, we will see here that some materials were still being collated at the local government level. That means they didn't even get to the rack centers. So, and after the election, nobody will ask questions. INEC sit down there, in their retreat. Only God knows what they discussed there. And then another big problem is the fact that the people who are involved in election management are not those who are stakeholders in the electoral process. You have all ad hoc staffs at the end users in electoral management. In some cases, some of them are not even trained, because the ones, there were complaints also that people that were trained for the job, 3 days crash program, and then on the day of election, their names are not on the list of those that will carry out the process. So all of this, until why I am taking time to identify all of these problems, so that the rest of us Nigerians will know that we are actually the ones in opposition, not the ruling party or the opposition party. It's the Nigerian people that are the ones in opposition, because it is easy and very convenient for them to move from APC to PDP, PDP to whatever party. But you remain there and begin to create excuses for them, or to find opportunity to, paint the problem in flashing lights, forgetting that at the end, it is you that will suffer the consequences. Look at Rivers. Today, Wike and Amechi have swapped roles. You have Amechi before he was a governor, Wike was a minister. Today they've swapped roles. But to conduct election in the same state, you see innocent people dying for these two people. Their children are abroad. So when we identify all of these problems and we know that truly we are the ones in opposition, we are the ones that will suffer the consequences, then we'll wake up to our electoral responsibility as citizens of Nigeria and begin to demand that our vote should truly count.